closed caption. No. If I stop this. You can unmute yourself for now, Mr. Barron, if you would like to do so.
No, it don't matter. I just showed up.
Well, we're trying to keep the room open for other folks, you know.
I was trying to wave to Weston. I don't know if he saw me.
Weston he's reading a book. He's not interested in you right now.
You want to say hey?
Hey.
Petersville Church of Christ is streaming live now, so we're all good. All right, I got to go grab a couple things. I'll be back.
Grab him.
It's just right. Good job, little excavator. Time to take a bow. There's work to do just for you, here and now. You may be small, little E, but you will grow. You're a mighty little excavator. Go, go, go. All right, look, my Bible class is going to start in just a minute, so I can't read them to you right now.
We
You want to talk to Darren instead?
want more stories.
Weston.
What?
What?
Say hi.
Hi.
What are you doing?
I was down on the Wood house.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds like fun.
I don't think he's at his house.
I'm not at my house. I'm at Brittany's house. Brittany, do you want to come say hey to Weston? She's almost done.
She said hello to him many times today.
Oh, okay.
What's Brittany doing?
She's washing dishes.
Oh.
I'm trying to put her to work, Weston.
Hey, Weston.
I saw y'all on the phone.
I know. I saw you too.
Did you see me on the phone?
I real E. Real E.
Excavator.
Real excavator. Real excavator.
That's a big word right there. That's pretty good.
Was that you on the Bible class thing?
Yes, I was the narrator.
You changed your voice. It's really funny.
I like to do one of these voices when I narrate. Weston, look who it is.
It's your dad. Uh-oh, did we just hijack this thing?
Joe, are you working?
Yes.
What a loser.
And
What is Mr. Joe doing?
it comes to those.
Patterson family.
Mom, I'm reading.
Okay.
Well,
Mom, I'm reading.
Smash. Ba, ba, da.
Courtney, are you going to cook me dinner at any point in time during this quarantine?
Here comes the floor.
Oh, she's not responding.
The tracks.
That means
Smash,
no.
smash.
She froze up. Oh, there she is.
Smash, smash.
Oh, no, that's not going to work.
Boom, boom, those.
That worked.
The bat hole. Sitting in the hole.
All right. Right now, you have the ability to unmute yourself. You can mute your microphone, unmute your microphone.
Bill,
We've got some more folks coming in.
Bill, is something else. Oh,
Why am I looking at the Patterson ceiling?
Bill is tall, tall, tall. Over
He's reading his book.
rain in the smash.
He's reading it, y'all.
Wind. The wind.
Boom, boom.
Tap, tap, tap. Those the truck. Train, those the
Albeit device audio.
in
Hey, there's Caitlin Rose.
Maybe it says on speaker.
yes. Oh, it's
Alright, 1 minute you have it.
fell into the hole.
He sure did.
Hey, there's a Gwen. Silence my cell phone.
Tall. Find my job. Mama,
Mhm.
I'm buying. Mama, I'm buying.
All right, can everybody hear me real quick? A couple minutes till. I'll make this announcement again, but I posted this over on Facebook. We're going to play show and tell tonight. So what I need you to do for the next 3 or 4 minutes is gather some items in your house that you can use for show and tell. All right. Now, what you're going to be doing is looking for items that you would bring on a 20-mile trip. What would get you successfully to the end of a 20-mile trip? So I'm going to give you those details and no other details at all. So you're looking for what you would need to get through a 20-mile hike. So go pick up those items. You go pick them up. I know where some of them are. So if you need to, take a minute and gather the items you need to complete a 20-mile trip. All right, I'll be right back. I have been intentionally vague. I did not. A 20-mile trip, a 20-mile trip, 20-mile trip. My wife is trying to change things. No, the only information you get is a 20-mile trip. How do you get to, and making the rules here. Nobody in this house or online is going to change my mind. 20-mile trip. If my wife tricked me into saying the wrong thing, I am rescinding that now. It's 7 o'clock. So we've got people joining in. I'm glad that you're here. We are going to have a time of show and tell in a little bit. So you're getting items together that you could use to take a 20-mile trip. All right. So whatever those items are that you think you have in your house that would help you complete a 20-mile trip. I don't think Barron has I'm getting some texts on Facebook, which will come through in just a second. We look like we're about 45 seconds delayed on Facebook. So I just got a Facebook message. I will share that when it is time for show and tell. I think I see Danya coming in. We got nine houses on Zoom. Got another 23 houses over on Facebook. So that's great. I'm glad to see everybody here tonight. We are going to have a Bible study that'll last for a little bit. Right now, everybody has the ability to mute and unmute their own microphone. So we're going to try that tonight and see how that works. If you have a comment you'd like to make during our discussion, or if you have something you'd like to share or a question, then you can unmute your microphone and kind of chime in, say that you have a comment. And then once you've finished discussing that point, you can mute your microphone back again. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys to mute and unmute yourselves if you're here on Zoom. Of course, on Facebook, it's a little bit different, but I do see that there are folks typing in and texting in. So that's good to know as well. But we are getting ready to get started. Some folks are doing not really a scavenger hunt, but we are going on a show and tell adventure. So in a minute, we're going to have show and tell. If you're on Zoom, you can show us some items that you would use to complete a 20-mile trip. Okay. So get some stuff from your house, get things around the household items, what you would use to complete a 20-mile trip. And we'll text about it more on Facebook as well. Like I said, I've already gotten one instant Facebook message, so that'll be good too. We'll share when the time comes. All right. It's 7:03 now. Again, I think we're about 45 seconds to a minute behind on Facebook, and Boxcast is somewhere between the two. So if you're watching us on Roku or on Boxcast or something like that, you should have a little bit of a delay, and then it sends that signal, that video feed over to Facebook, and Facebook Live carries it at that point. So 3 different stages, room for everybody to join in and do things like that. So our Zoom crew, we're ready to start. Caitlin, we can see Sophie loud and clear. It's an adorable puppy dog. Everybody loves her. But we're going to get started. So tonight we're going to start in the book of Hebrews. So if you want to take your Bible, open up to the book of Hebrews. I want to be kind of careful here. This is a study that we are borrowing from the AIM network. In fact, real quick, I'm going to see if I can bring up adventuresinministry.com. It's a really good website. I'm going to share my screen with you real quickly. That one right there. So just for a real quick second, hopefully you can see this is Adventures in Ministry. AIM, they have an app. A lot of our youth have the app on their phone. It has devotional songs, kind of like a songbook that we use when we have devos together and stuff and singing. But Adventures in Ministry, they have a conference on a yearly basis. and they have a lot of other resources and things like that. Out and one of those, there's teaching. They have a teaching series, so I'll just go ahead and show you real quick. They have material, usually shorter, 3, 4, 5 series lessons for different things. And each one of these that you see scrolling down the page are just different things. We're going to do one of these that's by a friend of mine named Eric Gray. Eric's a youth minister and works with a lot of great events and things, and provided this class series from Hebrews chapter 12, and we're going to spend some time looking at that while I have our attention. I'm going to bring up, let's see if I can find it. Did anybody figure out the secret code from this afternoon? If you were on Facebook, I put a little puzzle to help you solve or get some idea about what Bible class would be about. And I wonder if anybody managed to make it out. I'm trying to show you my page. I wanted to hide that. Let's see. This one right here. Internet is a little bit laggy, so I apologize, but there we go. So we got 4 pictures. What do they have in common? I wonder if you're on Zoom, perhaps, you're seeing this image. Anybody want to unmute their microphone and take a gander at what this is about?
They all have some sort of shake in them.
They all have some kind of shake in them. That's exactly right. Caitlin gets the gold star tonight. We have the Friends logo. Of course, they're all drinking milkshakes. I got President Trump shaking hands with somebody. You have the salt and pepper shakers down in the bottom right. And then finally, there is the music shakers that the guy is playing in the percussion section. So that's a little bit of a preview real quick. We're in Hebrews chapter 12. And of course, the last couple of verses in Hebrews chapter 12 talk about things that are shakeable and things that are unshakable. I'm reading specifically Hebrews 12, verse 26. At that time, his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised yet once more, I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of things that are shaken, that is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And thus, let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. I want to talk about things that are shaken and things that are not shaken. The book of Hebrews, there's an interesting illustration that's very close. If you look earlier in chapter 12, it talks about in verse 18, Hebrews 12 and verse 18, it talks about you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and a tempest and the sound of a trumpet and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoken to them, for they could not endure the order that was given. If even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. Now, somebody unmute your microphone, or maybe if you're on Facebook watching, what is that referencing? What's that referring to? Those verses there in 18 through 20. Anybody got an idea? Hey, that's Andrea Avery. I know you. Who knows what Hebrews chapter 12? You can unmute your own microphone whenever you've got a thought. Verses 18 through what?
It's referring to when the people of God were getting ready to receive the law, and they had to cleanse themselves and stand by the mountain to wait.
That's exactly right. Mount Sinai. This is Mount Sinai, and whatever's going on at the top of that mountain was so overwhelming, was so unbelievable to witness that they were afraid. And of course, they were told that if anything even touched that mountain, that it would be destroyed, person or animal. And so Mount Sinai is being discussed there, and it says, you haven't gone to that mountain, you're coming to Mount Zion. And so he's going to talk about Mount Zion. But think about these mountains that are shaking, these things that are shaking. Now, Hebrews probably was written after the Apostle Paul had died, unless you think Paul wrote it. Some people do. But if you take the view that it doesn't seem like the same type of wording and writing style that Paul writes with, and it doesn't mention Paul at all in the letter, then Paul is probably already died. But Timothy is still alive. In fact, the Bible says earlier in Hebrews that Timothy had been released from prison recently. And then there's also a reference a couple of chapters earlier in Hebrews 10 and 11, talking about the old covenant is passing away. These old things are passing away. And it's using it in a context that's like the worship in the temple is still going on. Well, the temple in Jerusalem won't be destroyed until AD 70. So about the year 70. So we guess, and this is a whole lot of information that we're not really proving, but you can do some research and study on your own. If Paul was killed around AD 64 or maybe 65, and the temple is destroyed in AD 70 years, then you got about a 5-year window when the book of Hebrews, the language would make sense. And so probably Hebrews was written sometime between 65 and 70 AD. Now, we talk about mountain shaking, and it's really interesting that when the book of Hebrews would have been brand new, so probably less than 10 years old. You think about going to the bookstore now and getting books that are 10 years old. You know, that's still a very new publication. In 79, there was a catastrophic mountain that shook. It was Mount Vesuvius. And you've probably, if you're not familiar with Mount Vesuvius, you've heard of the name of the city that was affected. The city was called Pompeii. Pompey was a Roman general, and the city of Pompeii was completely buried in the volcano. They've still got today you can go to the ancient ruins and you can see the people that were buried and some of the houses and homes and all that kind of stuff. So when I read here in Hebrews 12, starting in verse 18, about these things that are shaking and how the mountain is trembling and there's all of these catastrophic things happening, and then to know that just a few years later, over in Italy, that entire city is going to be buried when a mountain shakes, when a mountain erupts, then the idea of a kingdom that cannot be shaken becomes very interesting and very realistic to me. So we're going to talk about being unshaken, and I think that that's very applicable in our world exactly right now, and that's why I picked it. So I want to talk about this idea of being shaken. And he says specifically the things that have been made or the things that have been created are those things that shake, that can be shaken. Unmute your microphone, type some things here into Facebook when it comes through there, and tell me what you think. What does it mean to live in a world that can be shaken? What does that mean? What is he referring to? Shaken versus unshakable. Shakeable versus unshakable. Anybody that wants to, just reach up there and unmute your microphone. Tell me what crosses your mind with shakeable and unshakable.
What comes to my mind is some of the things that are happening right now with the coronavirus, and there have been quite a few earthquakes. Unshakable means that it can be destroyed and won't
All right.
last
Shakeable
forever.
means it could be
And
destroyed. All right. Good. Yeah.
unshakable, referring to heaven, means that it's going to last forever and it won't be destroyed.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Autumn brings up the image, or she mentioned the idea of a foundation. And of course, the first thing I think of is the wise and foolish builders. The wise man built his house on a rock, and it was not shaken when the rains came. And then the foolish man built his house on sand, which it did not have a foundation, and it was shaken. It was taken away. Anybody else have any thoughts about shaken versus unshaken? And then I had a follow-up question. Deirdre already kind of mentioned it. What is being shaken in our world right now? What are we seeing? How is this playing out? How are we being shaken right now? What are your thoughts, or what kind of easily unsettled? That's John Oakley typed that over at Facebook, so I thought I'd mention that. That's a good way to example to give. How are we being shaken right now? How is the coronavirus shaking things? Shaking things up. What's it doing?
What it's doing right now for a lot of people in the world, especially here in the United States, we're used to a certain way of life around here, and now that this thing is going on the way it is, and there, you have states that are basically calling for the, sit at home, don't leave, and people, people have put their trust in stuff and worldly things so much that their lives are topsy-turvy now.
Right.
And it kind of goes back to the foundation thing. I think about the devotional song, which is, Jesus, you're my firm foundation. If we don't have a firm foundation, then, man, we're going to be shook so bad that we're going to fall apart. And that's what's happening to a lot of people now. And now it's getting to the point where even violence and things like that starting to erupt in places. And so, if you don't have a firm foundation to build on, it's going to be like the guy with the sand. It's
right.
It's going to splat.
Yeah, and that reminds me, something else Jesus says on the Sermon on the Mount. He talks about not storing up your treasure. Right? Don't store up your treasure where moth and rust corrupt, and where thieves break in and steal. This idea. Those things are temporary. Those things can be snatched away, taken away. They can let you down. And when we rely on them for too long, we get comfortable, and now people are learning to be uncomfortable because it's not going the way that we think. That's a good point. So what we want to look at is how heaven is different. What we want to look at is the idea that heaven is not shakeable, that heaven is unshaken, that it is a foundation. And what we want to do in this class, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, while we've got some Wednesdays ahead of us to do this, we're going to carry this study on using Hebrews chapter 12 to help us focus more on the unshakable kingdom rather than the shakeable kingdom. And that always reminds me of either 1st or 2nd Corinthians. I think it's chapter 5 and verse number 7, where it talks about we walk by faith and not by sight. I think it's a really powerful and a really important passage that we need to keep in mind as Christians, is that it's not our walk, our life, our decisions are not based on what we see right in front of us. They are, which is a reaction. We are acting based on the faith that we have in God and in God's system and in God's way of living that will work. And so what we're going to do is the reality of heaven as an unshakable foundation is out there, right? It exists. The question is whether or not we as individuals can, at any given moment, act as though we trust that reality. Act as though we are actually believing in, trusting in, acting on that goal or that foundation of heaven as our unshakable kingdom. And so what these lessons are going to do is use some stuff in chapter 12 here in Hebrews chapter 12 to ask us the question or to answer the question, how do we focus on that? How do I get back to that when there's so much chaos going around? I want to read another thought that John Oakley typed over at Facebook. People have become accustomed to always being on the go, and now we're unsure of how to use this time that's in front of us. It should hopefully allow us to turn to God. It should help us to even better realize the importance of family, friends, and neighbors. What's that country song? I know Michael Burns. Cecil, you'll know this one. I Miss Mayberry. Sitting on the front porch. The old days, before we got so busy, before we had so many things going on around us. But this idea of realizing that we have something more permanent than what's going on in this chaos around us. And that's what I want to focus on. So we're going to use some material here in chapter 12, 2 or 3 ideas each week to explore making sure we are living on that firm foundation, the unshakable part of being citizens of that unshakable kingdom. So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of the chapter for our first point tonight. If we want to be part of that unshakable kingdom that's mentioned in Hebrews 12, verse 28, then we have to run the race. All right. Now, this is where we're going to start off with some show and tell. And so if you were here earlier on, I told you to go get some stuff, right, in your house. What would help you complete a 20-mile trip? All right. So if you've got some stuff here, I want you to kind of be holding those up to the camera. We got water bottles, right? I say that's a big water jug. I can't read that, Doug. I won't read that on TV. All right. Oh, okay. See, now we're getting somewhere. All right. Bradley Patterson has a set of keys. So the question is, what kind of trip are we taking, right? Because I went out to my garage. I'll just go ahead and tell you. I went out to the garage and I got my 65-liter camping backpack, right? And I've got my hiking sticks in here, and I got a water bottle, and I got, the knife that I use when I go camping. I got all this kind of gear. We've got water bottles. That's all right. Andrea's got a bag. Ooh, Jeff has a GPS. I like that. Is that Garmin? Yeah. But a GPS tracker. Is that Gwen? I see has sunscreen. That's pretty smart. Yeah, probably should do that. And there it is. All right, Bradley Patterson has toilet paper. That's all that matters. And in fact, I will tell you that let's see. Kayla said that
I'd be careful about that toilet paper. Somebody come get it.
That's right. You better not be alone. All right, Baron, I don't know why you need to take those antlers into the wood and onto your trip, wherever the trip is. I don't know how those are going to help you, but there's car keys. Yeah. Caitlin, I saw that. Yeah, she's holding up her purse. What is that? Cookies? Is that food? Oh, yeah. So this is a cell phone. That's very smart. So here's what I wanted, think about for a second. 20 miles, a 20-mile trip is very vague, and that was obviously intentional for a reason. If you were, taking a trip, 20 miles is a long way. I mean, you could get from here, to the other side of Killen, get almost to you can get to Rogersville, 20-mile trip. So if I needed to pick something up in Rogersville, then I'm going to get my car keys and I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to go, What other kind of trips are there? There's a hike. If I'm going to hike through the woods, then yeah, I want my backpack with me. I want to carry a big water bottle. I want to, I might need a hammock, or I might need big old hiking shoes or something like that. All kinds of different packs that I could carry things in. But then if I asked you, all right, what would you do? What would you carry with you to run a marathon? which is 23 miles, 26 miles. I knew that. A 26-mile marathon. If you tried to run a 26-mile marathon with a 30-pound pack on your back, I don't think you're going to place in the top 10 in a marathon. I don't think you're going to finish a marathon if you try to run it with a 30-pound pack on your back. Now, I know there's some pretty incredible stories out there of people doing that for, family and doing some other cool stuff. But most of us, if I tell you you're going to run a marathon, are not thinking about packing a whole bunch of gear. And that's what we want to think about tonight. What do we have to shake off? What do we have to put aside? What do we have to get rid of if we're going to complete a 20-mile trip? What you got? Yeah. So Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, verse we're very familiar with, most of us. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. If we want to get to the kingdom that cannot be shaken, the unshakable kingdom, then we've got to run the race that's set before us. Each and every one of us have a race that we have to run. Verse 1 here tells us we've got to do two things if we're going to be able to run that race. So tonight, that's what we're going to think about. So we're going to focus on. To win the race, the first thing that we have to do is lay aside every weight. Now, I'm going to distinguish between the weight that we carry and the sin which entangles us, because I think there's a neat point that can be made in considering this. The weight that we're talking about is a weight that we carry around that we don't have to. It's that pack that's on our back. It's, it could be physical weight. Me running a marathon is going to be much different than somebody who is a lot smaller than me running a marathon. It's going to be a lot different process for those people than it is for me, because there's a weight difference. And I might have to wear a 20-pound pack on my back because I'm already wearing a 20-pound pack on my front. But, what we carry makes it more complicated for us to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. What are some things that can slow us down like that? What are some things, again, we're going to talk about sin that wraps around us in the next point. So these things aren't necessarily sinful things. They're not necessarily things that are wrong in and of themselves, but they are things that if we tried to carry them with us, make it much more difficult to run the race that is before us. Anybody that wants to, and unmute your microphone, share some thoughts.
Discouragement.
All right, discouragement. What do you mean by that, Doug? I agree with you. Explain.
When you're discouraged and you lose heart, you feel like that everything you're doing is useless.
Right.
You begin to feel useless, and you just want to throw your hands up and walk away.
What happens to all your energy when you feel defeated like that?
Well, you don't have any.
Right. It just takes a nosedive.
Just takes the wind out of your sail.
Right. Now, somebody else, y'all keep sharing. I want to hear a lot of different ideas about this one. What are some weights that we carry?
It can be things and activities that we do. Like for me, it's video games on my phone preventing me from either studying the Bible or doing other things I should be doing.
Yeah, definitely. That kind of distraction. I think that's a good one. Yeah. Gwen, Jerry, what y'all have?
You have to train for a race or a run. Don't let those that will drag you down, don't let them be a burden to you.
Right. Sometimes it's people. Sometimes people can hold you back, can prevent you from accomplishing that goal that you have. That's definitely true. Who else has something? I see Tyler's unmuted. Maybe they just joined in. Maybe they don't know that they're unmuted.
Chelsea.
Gary, go ahead. Oh, it's on Facebook. Gary Pinnell says our past can be a weight. That's a good. Yeah, we can be dragged down, or we can be hindered by our past mistakes and our regrets that we're carrying around. That's a really good one. I like that. Let's see, who else had one? Richard, or Chelsea? Go ahead.
I was basically gonna say what you were just saying about regret and shame and that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely, yeah. It's hard to cope with that sometimes because we don't know what to do with that. That's true. Who else is? Let's see, John, are you unmuted? John O'Malley? No, there's a couple that I just have pictures of. I don't have video for, and I can't tell, so that's my fault. But what are some other things? Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Unrealistic expectations.
All right, go into some more detail about that. What do you mean, Richard?
Well, when you're expecting an outcome that God is not going to give you, it causes problems.
Yeah,
we judge man's ways.
Yeah, disappointment. That's good. Good. Jeff, go ahead. I saw your hand.
Fear and worry.
I think worry is a big one. Yeah, fear is too. How do you see fear playing out as something that drags us down, that prevents us from running as effectively as we can?
Well, fear, if you let it overtake you, you'll become lethargic. You won't move. Fear can freeze
Frozen.
you, and you'll be too afraid to move forward or better yourself, or whatever, whatever adjective you want to throw in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was reminded when I was studying this tonight of the parable of the soils. The parable of the sower is what we call it. The sower went out to sow, and the first soil doesn't break the ground at all because it's the road, it's the pavement. The second soil falls into the ditch beside the road, and so there's a little soil there, so it springs up real quick, but there's no root, there's no depth, and so as soon as the sun comes out, it burns it and scorches it. The third type of soil is what really bothers me. And that third type of soil is it gets roots and it grows down, and then the plant grows up. But before the plant has time to produce any fruit, it says the thorns choke it out. And when Jesus explains the meaning of the parable, he specifically says that those are the cares of the world, the distractions, the things that get in the way, and that compete for our time, compete for our resources, compete for our attention and our affection and our loyalty. And I think there's an awful lot of connections there. Baron, I see your hand. Go ahead. What have you got?
I was thinking about, we talked about unrealistic expectations, but I'm thinking as well as just regular expectations, things that are in our minds supposed to happen because that's the way, quote unquote, the world works.
Right.
I'm thinking about, just a few weeks ago, we can take to the corona problem. Just a few weeks ago, we were supposed to go to work. We were supposed to do our normal thing, but then that got, turned upside down and something changed. But even the things that we might think that we need to do, maybe like church functions, or maybe particular things that we think that, well, this is how it's supposed to be, and really it might not be helpful, or it might not be the greatest anymore, but it used to be, but it's not anymore. Maybe we have that expectation, that realistic expectation, but it's actually starting to weigh us down.
Right.
Thinking, well, the world actually doesn't work according to your schedule. It doesn't work to your expectations. It works the way it wants to work.
Yeah, preventing us from seeing the good that we can do here and now because we're caught up in how we preferred it to be before, or something along those lines.
This is how it's supposed to be, quote unquote.
Supposed to be. Yeah, good. Yeah. Go ahead, Richard, and then Jeff.
Spiritually unhealthy relationships.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Spiritually unhealthy relationships.
Right. I think that talks a little bit, what Jerry mentioned a second ago, the idea about, people that aren't going to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish. What does Paul say being unequally yoked, believers and unbelievers who are, they're trying to drag you a different direction. They're trying to go a different way. And if you're trying to move forward, it's going to be really hard with somebody pulling you in the opposite direction. And that can be really tough too. Those are good. That's a lot of stuff. And none of it is wrong or bad or evil in and of itself. But when it prevents us from accomplishing a goal, we have to ask ourselves if it's worth it. I have to sit back and say, all right, this is what's going on with me or in my life, or this is something that I'm carrying around. Is it helping me reach my goal, or is it pulling me back from being effective and from getting where I want to get, right? So that's a good way to think about that weight that we carry around with us. And then the next thing that he talks about is the sin, and this is a step in the more serious direction. And he talks about sin that clings to us, that besets us. Other translations, say different things, but I like the English Standard Version where it says it clings to us or it wraps around us. To me, this is trying to swim in a suit of armor. This is trying to swim in a 3-piece suit, with full clothes on, and you're just going to get dragged down by the waves, by the water, by the current, and all that kind of stuff. The sin that clings to us is that stuff. It's a little bit easier to identify, unfortunately, but it's those things that trip us up, that make us fall down, that make us lose our ability to go forward. I might be able to make progress with all of this other stuff going on in my life. I may be able to, how far is that? I might be able to do that marathon with a 30-pound pack on my back. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be unnecessarily difficult, but maybe I can keep going. But I've got all these distractions going around. Sin, I think it's a different story. I think what the writer of Hebrews is trying to convince us of right now is sin wraps around our feet and prevents us, entangles us, and causes us to fall and not be able to progress, not be able to move forward. And so I focus on this phrase a little bit different direction. For me, it makes me ask the question, why is it so difficult to get to disentangle from that sin? Why is it so hard for us to free ourselves from that sin that wraps around us? What is it? What do you guys think? How do you think about that? How would you answer that question? When Hebrews says sin wraps around us, clings to us, it's like we can't get free of it, and it causes us, it's trying to trip us up and make us fall. What kind of thoughts run through your mind on that?
I think that part of that is because sin can be so pervasive in us, and it can be so much a part of our personality almost, that we don't even know when it's happening. We don't even know when it takes place. We watched, both of us, to tell the entire class, watched a sermon very recently from Heritage about personal sin in a minister's life, and talking about the idea of how do you deal with sin. Well, sin is a lifelong process of trying to get rid of it.
Right.
And thinking about that, I thought about how there are times when people, even at the church that we go to, might do something as simple as gossip, something that we might think is like a simple sin. But the thing is that we might be gossiping about somebody around us. But the problem is we might question, are we gossiping right now? And our response is, no, we actually really care about this person. We're just talking about.
We're trying to help.
We're trying to help, but of course we're not trying to help them. We're just trying to talk about them. Right. And we legitimize it. We look to that action as, well, we care about them. Well, in theory, maybe you do, but in reality, what's being shown is
what's being done at this exact moment is very different.
And so I think about this question of like a sin that clings to you is a habit or something that's so ingrained in you that, maybe you are a worrywart. Maybe, and fear is a part of your life. It's how you think of everything. Or, mine is my mouth, and sometimes I think that I can say that even though I'm not supposed to, and I think it's okay. And so these things that we think are maybe personality traits are actually sin, with its grips and its thorns in our side, that it's just trying to rip us apart. So I thought about that while you were talking.
And that's a really tough one, because we do try to minimalize, well, that's just the way I am. That's just what, I am what I am. What you see is what you get. I'm not gonna be different or act different. And sometimes we need to acknowledge that that's a sinful part of us that we need to be trying to do better at, because it's preventing us from running the race that's set before us. Hey, Tyler figured out how to get that camera on. Hey, good deal. All right.
Hey,
Go ahead. Yeah.
it also makes the enemy knows our weaknesses, and he knows what to throw at us that's going to grab a hold of us and keep a hold of us. And I think of the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, where he had the little demon following him around and knew him very well, and knew how to
knew exactly what it was to get him. That's right. Yep. And that's Christy Smith over on Facebook. She pointed out Satan is trying to grab a hold of us, trying to use lies, trying to use fear, like some of those other comments, to get us to fall down, to turn around, to quit, or to give up. And it's hard. And what I want to focus on is, it tells us in Hebrews 12, verse 1, we need to run with endurance the race that is set before us. And the word there for race is the word agona, which is where we get our English word agony from. It is grueling. It is hard. Running a marathon is hard enough by itself. We don't need to make it any more difficult by carrying around a weight that isn't necessary, or by having our feet tangled up in sin, having other things that are grabbing a hold of us and yanking us down. We have to run with endurance this race. It's already difficult enough. It's already agonizing enough. And so we've got to learn that if we want to make it to the finish line, that we're going to have to figure out how to untangle this stuff, how to learn to step away from it, to get away from it, to not let it cling to us, and what those weights are that we need to set aside, that we need to get rid of. I don't think so. If you want to, Autumn has a thought, and we're kind of stuck, because if she has her microphone turned on, then it comes, or volume, it comes through double. So she's coming over here to make a thought.
The hiking point. I think about
always.
Adam, we can't hear her very well.
Sorry. I was thinking about when you're going on a hike, or when I go on a hike, I always take too much stuff with me. I always think I need 3 of this and 5 of this, and just in case this happens, I'm going to bring this. And I always have way too much stuff that I never, ever, ever take out of my backpack. And I'm always complaining on the hike, the entire hike, because my backpack's too heavy. And so I'm like secretly stuffing stuff into Adam's backpack so that mine's not so heavy. And I was thinking about the application for that. I think sometimes we spend so much time preparing that we overburden ourselves with the need to know how to do all the things right, when really we maybe just need to simplify and figure out the one thing that works for me and that be the thing that gets me through life. And that might not be the same thing as the thing for you. Instead of thinking we've got to have all these things figured out, because then we feel like we have to do them all perfectly and we have to keep them all with us and be ready to jump in and do, whether it's a talent or a gift or whatever. Maybe we just need to simplify. And maybe that's kind of the thing we're having to learn right now is, you know, what do we really need? What do we really need? We don't need to bring it all.
Yeah, I think that's true. That actually gets into a point that I had written down at an earlier spot and just kind of skipped over. But Michael brought it up, Burns over at Facebook. You cannot run it all by yourself. And this is to me, the opposite of what we talked about earlier that Jerry and Richard and some others brought up, the idea some people are going to pull you the wrong way, and that's bad. And we need to learn how to not let those people, you know, get wrapped around us and hold us back. But then there are people that can help us, that can assist us. And I was thinking about these activities where you have to have help from somebody else. If you go on a hike, I'll use the Appalachian Trail, right? Appalachian Trail, longest continually marked trail in North America, one of the longest in the entire world. Starts in Georgia, goes all the way up into Maine. You cannot possibly carry everything you need to get from Georgia to Maine in your backpack. It is impossible. The amount of food that you're going to eat on that trip, the amount of water you're going to have to drink on that hike, it's going to take months and months of traveling, and you can't get there carrying it all on your back. And so what you have to do is rely on friends and family to send you care packages. And if you research the Appalachian Trail a little bit, what happens is there are towns all along the way. You know, some of them are 10 miles apart, some of them are 30 miles apart, but every few days you're going to cross a place where you can access civilization. And then there will be days where you don't see anybody, but there's going to be times when you're going to hit civilization. And the post office in those towns is a busy place because their families know, all right, somewhere around June the 3rd, somewhere between June the 3rd and the 10th, I'm going to make it to this town. And so they will send provisions, food or gear or clothes or something like that, that I can swap out and I can load in my backpack so that I can make it the rest of the way. Now, we may not think that about a marathon, right? They run a marathon, 26 miles. They run that in several hours. But they still drink water on that marathon, don't they? And they don't carry that water with them. There are stops along the way where there's a water station, and there are people that are waiting there with water to hand them, to give them, to make it, to help them get through. I thought about NASCAR race, 500 miles. You're not going to win a NASCAR race unless you learn how to take an effective pit stop. And if you don't have a pit crew that's there, you're not going to have enough fuel. Your tires aren't going to make it. There are times when you have to stop and rely on other people to help get you through. I just saw Barron's chat. His family wouldn't send him anything on the Appalachian Trail. Oh, me. So I think that's neat. I think that's a really good point. And a lot of the conversation is bringing that out, that we need each other to bear one another's burdens. We need each other to help us make it through, to send things along the way. Caitlin, I see you. What you got?
I was just going to say, I think, and you've kind of already said this, but I think that's one of the things that the COVID-19 stuff has brought out more than anything else is not just how much we want to keep going and being out places. Like, I feel like that's all we're focusing on is how, people are really terrible because people want to be out. People aren't terrible because they want to be out. People want to be out because they want to see their people. And I'm not even a people person at all, but I miss my people so much. I have laid in bed crying over it. And So I think that's the biggest thing is we need connection. And there's a Brene Brown quote that says that connection is the root of human existence. And without it, there is, this is a paraphrase of the quote, but without it, there is catastrophe. There is heartache because human connection is what
not good to be alone.
Right. It is not good to be alone. That was what I wrote in my blog article, was about, to Genesis 2 and talking about that. And so I think we need to focus on that more than we focus on how humans must be so terrible because they want to go to restaurants, because I think there's just as much that humans just need humans and they need to be around humans, even if that's just in a restaurant setting, even if that's just going out with friends to eat, even if that's going to a friend's house, all those things we can't do right.
So hopefully we won't take fellowship for granted, from here on out. But that brings up, this was going to be the last question, but we'll do it now because Hebrews 12 and verse 1 says, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us do our job. Let's do our thing. That cloud of witnesses can be these Bible heroes from Hebrews chapter 11, but I also think that we have a crowd of people. We have our own cloud of witnesses. I want to hear from you guys personally, not just in general, not just this kind of a person or this kind of a person, but I want you guys to tell us who's in your great cloud of witnesses and why are they there? Who is it that encourages you to be able to keep running your race? By the way, Amanda, are you at work right now? That's awesome.
Yes.
That's great. I think that's fantastic. I'm so glad you get to hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just glad that it's not busy right now.
Absolutely. Well, you take care, like you did, take care of business when it comes in, but I'm glad you get to hang out. But so you guys tell me, who's in your great cloud of witnesses that gets you by? Baron, go ahead.
I just thought about something. I always kind of wondered cloud of witnesses and what it kind of meant. I just figured it was like just a group of people, but I'm thinking of the fact that where do we see clouds in the Bible? And the cloud is always where God was.
That's a big deal.
As the tabernacle's being built in Exodus 40, the cloud comes down and it engulfs the tabernacle. And that's how God is present with them. In 1 Kings 8, the same thing happens again to almost like not legitimize the place.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, people who I think are in this great cloud of witnesses, I will be vague, which is, people who truly show and idealize the presence of God. People who are
right. Truly, so who does that for you, Baron?
I'm not answering that. But someone who is very patient and someone who's very kind. Someone who shows a great amount of wisdom. People.
If you knew somebody like that, you should probably marry them.
Oh, wasn't even thinking of her.
That
was
but who else? Give us some specifics. Tell us about.
I knew a man in Jacksonville. His name was Wayne Compton. He died about 3 years ago in 2017. And Wayne Compton was one of the elders at the church that I grew up at, and he died of a cancer that overtook him. And I think about him who, even when he was not an elder, elders would go to him to ask him questions. He was the embodiment of wisdom that I
right.
So I think about now, as we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, he was the embodiment of God's presence, and now even more, he is in God's presence. And so now that you have pushed me to answer deep into my heart.
That's acceptable. I'll take that one. I'll take that. Who else? Who else has something they'd like to share? Caitlin Creasy, I want to hear from you tonight. I'm calling you out.
Okay. Marsha Oakley would be one that is huge encourager. Sorry.
Now I know why your microphone's muted. Hey, Weston.
And then like Brent and Leanne, I've always admired how they raise their children. And their children are so well behaved.
Yeah.
Friends.
Hey, friend. I like that. That's good. And I like that it's people that are close to us. Who else? Who else has somebody they could throw out there?
Me.
Go for it. Gwen.
This is kind of a roundabout way, but I feel really bad for all the seniors that are not going to get to experience a few little things. But I have two friends from high school that over the years our relationships have kind of gone, but they're just really positive people. And that's what I got from that, not an event, but it's the relationships from that time period. And they're the ones that have really been beneficial for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to read from John Oakley over on Facebook. Emily, my parents have always shown me the best example. My mother, father-in-law, Frank Winters, Ben Hayes, Wes Howell, people that had an impact on my life in the most important times as a teenager. I think that's important. I mean, I have, like Barron, I have heroes. My grandfather is my spiritual, hero, role model. I think about the preacher in Hendersonville, Jerry Sin, who inspired me to want to be the kind of preacher that I try to be. Even when I knew I wanted to be a preacher, I didn't know what kind of a preacher to be. And I think he was a great example of what a minister should be and that. But then I've also got my friends, kind of like Caitlin and others talk about. I mean, Andrea over there, I know it says Andrea Avery, but she's a Woodley and she's always going to be a Woodley. And, the Woodley is a close family, and growing up together and being able to look back on times where we've, challenged each other and been there for each other through a lot of things, that's a big deal. Tanya over at Facebook, Tanya Rickard talks about my mom and dad. Definitely. You begin to appreciate those people, especially when they're not there anymore. My grandfather, like Barron mentioned, Tanya, your dad definitely fits in that category. But we need to appreciate those people when they're with us, when we have them, especially. Anybody else wanted to say anything or write anything before I wrap it up? Go ahead, Amanda. Yeah, go ahead. Amanda, did you mean to? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I did. Yeah, while I don't have anybody in here, after everything that I've gone through, losing Dylan and everything that's happened, the whole entire church has been my biggest supporter. I get so excited. I get so many cards every single week, especially from the Oakleys. But then my mom and Kevin, they've always been there. They're the biggest supporters I've ever had.
That makes a difference. That helps us be able to pick up and keep going sometimes, when we feel like we're ready to quit. That's good. I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to finish with this example, this illustration that comes from the material from Eric. In 1845, the ill-fated Franklin expedition sailed from England to find a passage across the Arctic Ocean. The crew loaded their 2 sailing ships with a lot of things they didn't need. On these 2 vessels, they had a 1,200 volume library, fine china, crystal goblets, and sterling silverware for each officer that had their initials engraved on the handles. Amazingly, in the midst of all these supplies, each ship only had 12 days worth of coal for their steam engines when the winds were bad. The ships became trapped in a vast frozen plain of ice, and after several months, Lord Franklin died. The men decided to trek to safety in small groups, but none of them survived. One of these stories is especially heartbreaking. 2 officers pulled a large sled, and they made it more than 65 miles across the ice. But when rescuers finally found their bodies, they discovered that the sled was filled with the table silver. Those men contributed to their own demise because they carried things that they did not need. They tried to make it through with weight that was not helping them meet their objective. We do the same thing a lot of times in our life. We say that we want to be part of this unshakable kingdom, and yet when push comes to shove, we've got our hand trapped in the cookie jar. We're trying to lug behind us this huge, heavy sled full of earthly laden things that are shakeable, that are temporary, that are seen, but that are not permanent. And they slow us down and they keep us from getting where we want to get. So the first thing we've got to do if we're going to be a part of that unshakable kingdom is we have got to lay aside the sin, or we've got to lay down the weight, and we've got to disentangle from the sin that prevents us from running the race that is set before us. I hope this has made some sense tonight. I see that there's still conversation going on over at Facebook about different people that are in our cloud of witnesses. Think about how you can be a part of someone's cloud of witness, how you can be a part of someone's encouragement this week, and try to reach out to them in some good ways to make that difference. Next week, we're going to pick up with a second thought about how to be a part of that unshakable kingdom. For the next few minutes after we say a prayer, I'll leave the room open and we can kind of chat back and forth a little bit. That seemed to be enjoyable last week. And we'll try to keep that going as well. But let's finish our Bible study tonight with a prayer. Thank you again for joining and being here. I really do. It means a lot to me that we have this time together in God's Word. So let's finish with a prayer, and we'll visit for a little bit after that. Dear Heavenly Father, I'm thankful for this night that we have to be together, even though we're not together, that you have made a way for us to feel connected. And I'm thankful for this technology. I'm thankful for the things that it enables us to do. I know that it is a substitute, that it is not as good as true fellowship where we are face to face. But in the meantime, when it's not feasible for us to do that, to be able to have this time together, I'm grateful for it. I think it's a blessing, and I appreciate this time. Lord, I ask you to bless each person that's here tonight, wherever they're joining from, however they're able to be a part of this, that we would be thankful to be on a foundation that cannot be shaken, that we are a part of a kingdom, that no matter what is howling around us, no matter what is pouring down on us, no matter what is raging on the outside, that we are safe and secure from all alarm. And we have each other in the midst of this. Help us to cherish that and to contribute to it. As we go this week, help us to be the kind of people that you want us to be. Help us to be that city that's been set on a hill so that we can shine like stars in the night sky. And forgive us when we don't. Give us the strength to stand and try again. We offer this prayer in the name of Jesus. Amen. Again, thanks. If you've got to get on the road, then you're more than welcome to do that. By on the road, I mean just don't go outside. But if you got to go somewhere, feel free to do that. But anybody else that wants to unmute the microphone and play around a little bit, tell me what's going on with your day. That would be appreciated.
Hey, baby Reed.
I saw Reed, waving a little while ago, or banging on the high chair there. He's going at it.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah.
I'd like to give a little shout out. I went and gave blood Tuesday, and they said they are in dire need of blood donors, and they gave me the number. So if anybody would be interested in giving blood to see where the blood mobile, or where, if they want to come to their place, they can call and find out where they can give if anybody would be interested in giving, because they are needed.
You could probably find on Facebook where that blood mobile is going to be, and that is true. They've been asking for help for a long time, so that's true. Chesney, what are you doing?
Say hi. Y'all, they can hear you. Say hi. Hi.
No, it's just video. Hey, Callie.
Hey. Oh, wait, no.
All the kids.
Disney, you're my best friend.
Avery, aren't there supposed to be Andrea? Aren't there supposed to be two of those in the picture somewhere? Is there another kid somewhere? Or is that kid asleep?
I think she's off watching Mickey Mouse.
Well, I can't blame her for that.
Plus, it's an hour later over here, so.
That's true. Yeah, y'all are already at 9 o'clock. It's bedtime.
Yep.
How are things in North Carolina? Did they shut down the border over there or anything crazy?
I mean, got stay-at-home orders.
Fun.
You live near Raleigh. Our parents live in Raleigh.
Yeah, Andrea, where are y'all at?
We're in
now.
We're right between Winston-Salem and Greensboro.
Oh, okay.
So about an hour outside of Durham.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Hey, Reed.
There's Reed. Hey. And then there's the puppy dog. Caitlin Richardson, you might as well go get Sophie and let Sophie jump up on your lap.
Been in my lap this entire time.
Oh, well, she must be
Hello to
comfortable.
Chesney. Hey, Weston. What's up, Weston?
Hey.
Hey.
Oh, wait. Hey, Reed.
Something to show you, Winston.
Oh, wait.
One of these days, we might as well just go ahead and have a pet-friendly service and just everybody bring your cats or your dogs or whatever.
With them. Oh, look at the kitty. Hey, the kitty.
We can offer sacrifices. That's Kitty.
I saw Tiffany Powell was on over at Facebook. Tiffany and Nate, they've got geckos and all kinds of fun stuff. So we need to get them on the video so they can share their reptilian.
Was it Donna West that had a little baby goat?
Oh yeah, goats. That's right. Oh my word. Well, I mean, lots of people have kids in their house.
Mitzi, I think Oscar is bigger than your dog.
What is that?
Have you unmuted it?
It's a guinea pig. It's a snack.
Oh,
It's honey. She's not a snack.
Wow.
Oh, she looks like she would taste delicious. If this quarantine goes on for too long, I'm just saying.
They have a gamey taste.
How do you know?
I believe in this.
Oh.
There's Phoebe.
You say little kitties? Oh.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Weston, be
This is share time at school.
That's right. It's show and tell. I think it's funny that Courtney put her pet on the screen just a second ago. Flashed over to Bradley.
I think I should brace the
And there's Autumn. Also.
Another one.
Oh, wow.
The new one.
There's all, yeah, Diet Coke. Yeah, Mitzi definitely. There's. I got sent to Walmart to
10-mile trip.
Right. Well, Walmart was out of caffeine-free Diet Coke. I know. I texted Autumn. I said, now we know it's bad. It just got real. You don't have caffeine-free Diet Coke.
This is Kit Kat.
Kit Kat?
Kit Kat, yes.
Like it.
Look there.
Where?
Just missed it.
Oh, man.
Oh, hey, Doug, you were talking about doing animal sacrifices a second ago. Over on Facebook, Marcia typed in and said, Terry said, not in the redecorated auditorium.
We'll do it in the fellowship
to
hall.
purify it. New. Have to purify it.
That's right. Don't we, Baron? Don't we have to sprinkle blood somewhere? Right, with the hyssop? Yeah, we do.
Yep.
Oh, man, that's funny.
So be sure to watch Baron's skit on our Facebook page.
Oh, that's right, guys. Yeah, definitely. You do not have to be a kid to enjoy the Bible things that are being put up. Bye, Weston.
See you, Weston.
Bye.
So are all these people talking?
I think he's got another dirty.
I'm out of here. Time for this.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for coming.
Good to see all y'all.
It's here to keep the room open. So, Caitlin Richardson, you're welcome to come back over to the house now. You don't have to.
Where the X is.
She had to go get a completely other house.
That's right. Bye, Jerry.
See y'all. Y'all have a
See you
good
later.
evening.
We'll leave too, I guess.
I guess.
Everybody else is leaving.
That's true. The party's over, man.
Right down there and then click, then
Bye,
tap.
guys.
Bye, Pattersons.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm not doing something wrong.
Oh, Callie, you know what I found out today?
What?
I lost the game.
Oh, it's message.
Lost the game. What
Hey, can y'all hear
Oh,
him?
we meeting. Okay.
Yeah, what?
Oh,
Then it says, do you want to leave?
I lost the game.
We do that every Our audio was not working a while ago, apparently.
Adam,
Oh,
look.
what is that?
Who's that?
That is cool. I like a Corvette. That's a good looking Corvette.
Adam money.
Go.
Very cool.
I'm gonna get my Camaro. You've got a Camaro too? Yes.
What's Sydney doing?
Sydney is being social distancing herself. So
distant,
she's
huh?
not letting the camera.
Yeah. I guess I don't blame her for that.
Oh, you got
The
another one?
cabin fever is starting to set in. Oh, what's that one?
A Camaro.
Nice. I like the black.
That was his show and tell.
There you go. Bye.
Did he know
All right. I guess it's my bedtime now.
that?
All right, I'll let you put these kids to bed.
Oh my goodness, that's right. Read y'all a bedtime story.
Have fun, Adam.
All right, y'all too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.